We left off the other day on Act 3, Scene 2, with Hamlet's conversation with Ophelia. I'm going to pick up with line 136. Hamlet says, "I've heard of your paintings too, well enough." Okay, so he back up for just a second. 130, 29, 128, when he tells Ophelia in response to his question, "Where's your father?" "At home, my lord," she lies to him. He says, "Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell." Farewell probably should be an indication that Hamlet should start to leave. "Oh, help him, you heavens," etc. And it's like she speaks, and that causes Hamlet to turn back. Kind of like the old TV detective show from the 70s, Columbo, where Columbo's about to leave, and he goes, "Oh, one more thing." So Hamlet comes back. "If you do marry, I'll give thee this plague." And so he offers her this blessing instead of a curse for marriage. He ends it, "Get thee to a nunnery. Farewell." And again, "Oh, heavenly powers." And he turns back. "I have heard of your paintings too." Okay? Paintings, he's referring to cosmetics, makeup. "Well enough, God hath given you one face, you make yourselves another." And this is an idea Shakespeare uses in several plays and a lot of the sonnets. And it's an idea that other writers contemporary with Shakespeare also use. That we use makeup, we use masks to cover over who we are. Kind of like with the minister's black veil, he uses the mask and thereby becomes mysterious and can be anything. So, God has given you one face, you make yourselves another. That is, you beautify yourself. You make you prettier than you are. You cover up your sin, if you want. You jig, that is, you dance a jig like a Scottish caper. You amble and you lisp. You amble probably refers to walking seductively, shaking the hips and stuff. Lisping, I guess, was looked at as sexy in Hamlet's day. You nickname God's creatures, that is, you rename them. And I don't mean just, you go from the Latin to the colloquial Hund, or German Hund, dog kind of thing. But God's creatures are named one thing. You give them a different name. And by that he means you take their meaning from them and give it something else. And what he's implying there is it's wrong. It makes it unkind, unnatural. Okay? And make your wantonness your ignorance. Make there probably means you justify your wantonness on your ignorance, your naivete, your not knowing. But what does he mean by wantonness? We've seen that word once before in a play by Shakespeare. When Oberon and Titania first meet in the grove, in the wood, she says, "Ill met by moonlight." Or he says, "Ill met by moonlight, proud Titania." "What, jealous Oberon?" And then he says, "Tarry thou, rash wanton." In your gloss for that book, your gloss said to find wanton as headstrong creature. It's not what it means. It means loose woman, sexually loose. She sleeps around, slut. You justify with ignorance, your wantonness. Like, I didn't know any better. Go to. I'm done. I'm not going to say anything else. It hath made me mad. What's the it? Everything he's talking about. But specifically, the behavior of women. Okay? Not specifically Ophelia, but because Ophelia is a woman, she's obviously included. I say we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. All but one, your footnote tells you, Claudius. I'm not gonna kill, all these married men and such. One is going to die. All right? The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery, go. Why is he said now multiple times to a nunnery? He began line 118. They've talked about, are you honest? Are you fair? Talked about beauty, honesty meaning chastity, chaste, truthful, all that kind of stuff. And he asks that, okay, let me back up for just a moment. Line 103, he asks, are you honest? But he asks that after what? After Ophelia tells him, when Hamlet says, I never gave you any letters, she says, you know damn well you did. My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed, has made the things more rich. That is, when you gave them, oh man, Hamlet, you have a way with words. It made her believe them. Remember she told Polonius, he had given her tenders of such affection, honest affection. She later on calls it with almost all the holy vows of heaven. And what is Polonius? How does Polonius qualify those tenders and those holy vows? Springs to catch woodcocks, traps to catch birds. Okay? So when she received them as having been filled with this sweet breath. She's not talking about sweet breath literally. What does she mean? Real, true, honest love. Their perfume lost. That is, they no longer have that sweet breath. They no longer are imbued with real, true, honest love. Take these again. That is, I don't want them anymore. Why? For to the noble mind, that is the mind of one who is noble, who is honorable, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. Prove, that means are tested, tried, and found wanting. What has she just said about Hamlet? Because he's the giver of these gifts. You are unkind. Or, rephrase that. You have been proven unkind. The question is, unkind when? Now? Or when he first gave her the letters? She's saying, I now no longer believe you were sincere and honest when you gave me these letters. I now think you only wanted sex. Okay? And then Hamlet asks, are you honest? Now, what can are you honest mean? Forget the footnote for a moment. The footnote says, honest meaning truthful and chaste. Are you truthful? What's another way of putting that? Are you lying? Are you being honest with me, Ophelia? My lord? She doesn't know what he means. What do you mean, am I being honest with you? So he goes on, are you fair? Because she introduced the idea of to the noble mind. See, if you are noble, then you are honest. You are truthful. And if you are noble, you are fair. Not doesn't necessarily mean you can't be ugly and noble also. Ugly physically. The fair implies not necessarily physical beauty, but inner, spiritual beauty. What do you mean? If you're honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. Your chastity should not omit discourse to or intercourse with your beauty. Okay? And then they go on. And Hamlet says, at the end of that speech that begins, "Ah, truly, I did love you once." Implying what? You're wrong to say that those letters were given by an unkind mind. I did love you once. Notice, did and once. They both imply past tense. Which means, I don't now. And there could be a reason why he says this. Because she just said, you lied to me when you gave me these letters before. Well, he also lied to her when he said, I never gave you those letters. Indeed, my Lord, you made me believe so. Made her believe so when? Notice, it's past tense again. She doesn't say, indeed, my Lord, I believe you. Like now. I believed you once. Fool me once. What? You're not going to fool me again. Hamlet, you should not have believed me. When he says that, what is he doing? He's playing upon the ideas. Whether he knows them or not is irrelevant. He's playing upon the ideas that both Laertes and her father told her about young men. What do they want? They want sex. And that's why he then goes into, for virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock. Virtue, proper belief. Virtue here can also mean love. Love is the highest of the virtues. For love cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. That is, my love for you, my chaste love for you, can't do what? It can't wipe out this, the original sin that we were talking about the other day. It cannot wipe out, because again, this is passed on how? Sex. Love, virtuous, chaste love, cannot so wipe out the physical desires of the body. Which is what St. Augustine said, the desire for sex is tied to the idea of the original sin. Okay? I didn't say this in any of my other classes. The medieval Catholic Church, among many of the ways that it was screwed up, sorry if any of you are Catholic, it's not the same today. The medieval Catholic Church said, sex is bad. Even in marriage, sex is bad. You shouldn't enjoy it. The enjoying of sex is what's called concupiscence. And it was thought, given Aristotle, that's the original sin. Okay? That's what gets passed on. But, big, huge but here, if married couples don't have sex, what happens to the human race? Dies out. Because unmarried people should not be having sex. That's even worse, kind of a thing. So, you're commanded if you're married to have sex, but not enjoy it. Problem there, Protestant Reformation that we talked about. So, you shouldn't have believed me. Why? Because even as much as I loved you, it's almost like he's saying, you know what, I did want to sleep with you. Well, It's almost impossible to talk about this the way I want to talk about it because of the time period in which we live. But imagine for a moment you have a young man, a young woman, they're both virgins, they're in love, they're engaged. They want to preserve their virginity until they're married. What is one of the reasons they're getting married? So they can have sex. Okay? My love for you, there's still that desire. I loved you not. See, here, what's he saying? I just wanted to have sex with you. Possibility. That's a possibility of what he means by that. I was the more deceived. Meaning, I really believed you loved me. Not just my sex, me. Okay? Get thee to a nunnery. It's the first time he uses it. Why? What's not going to happen to, ideally, if she's in a nunnery? She's not going to have sex. Okay? And that's why he says, why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Original sin, you have sex, you get pregnant, you just bred a sinner. Okay? And then he goes on and he finishes with that question that we talked about. Where is your father? Why? Why does he ask that question? Is this some weird Freudian thing? It doesn't make any sense to ask that question. Unless Hamlet asks it because he's wondering why the two of them are in that room. Why is Hamlet there in that room? The king tells us in the scene just before that. I don't mean separate scene number. I mean in the episode just before this. The king tells us, with Ophelia standing next to him, we have secretly sent for Hamlet hither. Now we don't know what that means. We don't know, did Hamlet get a note that said, Hamlet, the king wants to see you? Probably not, because that wouldn't be secret. It's probably something like, Hamlet, you are wanted in room 312. Okay, put yourself in Hamlet's shoes. You are wanted in the lobby. What do? What's the first thing that goes in your mind? For me, why and who wants me? But the note doesn't say that. So you look at your watch, you figure out it's time to go, you show up, and what do you see when you walk out the door? Hamlet has been told he is sought. He should come through that stage door, and I literally never made that connection until just now. He should come through that stage door onto the stage, looking for whoever sent for him. So to me, that means he can't miss Ophelia. Does that mean Ophelia sent for him? Where's your father? So he's asked her a couple of times if she's honest, if she's fair, talked about her honesty. At home, my lord. She's not honest, is she? Not at least in the truthful sense, because where is her father? He's spying on them right now. Obviously, the text doesn't say whether or not Hamlet knows this. But thinking of Hamlet as a living, breathing person, rather than just a flat character based on words on a page, we have to fill out the body of Hamlet, which includes the mind, which includes supposing things, coming up with assumptions. What should Hamlet assume? I think her words to Hamlet when she says, when givers prove unkind, that, kind of flips a switch, or it turns the dimmer up a little bit in Hamlet's mind. Like, why does she think I didn't mean what I said? Why did she want to give me back these letters? Why did she close her door to me? Why won't she talk to me anymore? I mean, when she first closed the door on Hamlet the first time, when he came to see her, what must go through his mind? Why? Before, she was free with her company. She'd let him in. They'd talk. And suddenly it stops. Why? What's the usual reason why? History of humanity, a young man loves a young woman, she has a father and a brother. Somebody said no, okay? At home, my lord, let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. What has Hamlet just done? Who are those words meant for? Ophelia? No. Who's the subject of those words? Her father. It's advice, right? Thing is, you don't tell advice to somebody else. You give advice to somebody else. But he's telling this to Ophelia, seemingly why? So she can give it to her father. What's the point of this advice? In London, Shakespeare's day, there was a building called Bethlehem. Its nickname was Bedlam, because that's how that was pronounced in Shakespeare's day. The TH became duh, Bedlam. Okay, the HE here getting lighted to that. Bedlam was used to house crazy people, what we would today call an insane asylum. Why would you lock up the insane? I asked my first class this, only one person proffered an answer. Well, let me put it this way. It was either in the late 70s or sometime in the early 80s, the United States started closing down insane asylums. And the people who had been housed in there, the quote-unquote inmates, were released. They weren't released to their families. They weren't released to halfway houses. They weren't released to other care facilities. They were released onto the streets. Okay? The majority of homeless today, well, maybe not majority, a large number, are, when they get arrested and things like that, turn out to be suffering from mental illnesses of one or other kinds. Some of them are totally bat-you-know-what crazy. I mean, just absolutely bonkers. All right? Why did they used to be locked up? Why do we lock up prisoners? Criminals. See, we lock up criminals for a different reason than we locked up people who are insane. Locked up criminals for what purpose? To protect society. We locked up the insane to protect them. Because they would get in trouble here. And people wouldn't know that they're insane. Okay? Because we consider insanity to be what? Something beyond their ability to control. They aren't what? Responsible for their actions. When Hamlet says, let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house, what's he suggesting? If he is locked up inside his own house, he can't do what? He can't get into trouble. He can't get into harm. But if he's outside his own house and plays the fool, what might happen? It happens in the next act. What are we going to see Polonius do? I mean, very shortly. Within a couple minutes, Polonius is going to say, and we're going to back up then. Polonius is going to say, let me arrange it so that his mother has Hamlet speak to her in her room to try to draw out what his problem is. Because he still thinks it's love. And he says, and I will so arrange myself that I can give an ear to everything. Okay. So he's going to spy on what relationship? Mother to a son. Who the hell does he think he is? Dad's being a damn fool. Oh, help you, sweet heavens. Oh, help him, sweet heavens. Why? She doesn't know why Hamlet has asked, where's your father? And I don't think she has a clue what Hamlet has just told her. Question is, why does Hamlet say this line here? Why does he ask, where's your father? To me, it only makes sense if Hamlet knows she's being watched by Polonius. And when she says, at home, Hamlet knows she's lying. And it's almost like he says, let the doors be shut upon him. Did you get that? If thou dost marry, he finishes and says, farewell. And it's like he turns to go away. She says, heavens help him. He turns back. If you do marry, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Farewell. He turns to go. She prays again. And Hamlet takes that prayer to be like calling him back. I've heard of your paintings too. You know, how you make yourself one thing that aren't. Hamlet finally leaves after saying to a nunnery, go. Why? Because if you go to a nunnery, Ophelia, she will not become what? A breeder of sinners? A maker of cuckolds. You know, he gives the image of the man who trusts his wife and then he grows these horns. I'll mention it to you since I mentioned all my other classes. There's a whole category of porn called cuckoldry porn. Cuck porn. C-U-C-K. Where men get their jollies watching their wives have sex with other men. Middle Ages would have just gone like, how in the world, you know? As well as some of us today still think that. So, go to a nunnery. Why? You won't be a breeder of sinners, and you won't give in to the living out of this. The practicing, so to speak. Okay? He leaves. Oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. Hamlet, in her mind, totally wasted. Gone. The courtier, soldier, scholar's eye, tongue, sword. That is, he is the eye, the tongue, the sword. The eye, the perception, the understanding, the tongue, the speaking, the rationalizing, the logic, the reason, the sword, the physical prowess, the martial prowess of the courtier, the soldier, and the scholar. In other words, she's saying Hamlet is the model to be emulated. The expectancy and rose of the fair state. Why? He's the prince. Everybody has their hopes in his kingship. He's the glass of fashion, the mirror of fashion, and the mold of form. Mold of form. Think of a mold made out of fine sand that you create. You pour molten metal in it, it cools, you pull that metal out, and you have the perfection of that mold. What does she mean, the mold of form? Pick your ideal of male beauty. That's it. That's what she says it is. Or male virility, if you want. The observed of all observers, quite down. Now your gloss tells you, for the observed of all observers, he's at the center of attention in the court. Okay, yes. What is that saying? Everybody in the court does what? They look at everybody else. But it kind of also means Hamlet's the center of Denmark, and everybody's got their eye on him. Okay? But that also implies what about everybody else? Everybody else is an observer. Observer within the play is like another word for spy. What is everybody else doing? They're not only keeping their eye on Hamlet, they're looking over here, and over here, and over here, and over here. They're all spying over their fences, looking into their neighbors' windows. Everybody's paying attention to everybody else's problems, and none of them seemingly is doing what? Looking inwardly. See, when he had the conversation with Horatio about the ghost and said, "'Tis a mote to trouble the mind's eye." Mote, speck of dust. But because of Shakespeare's familiarity with Scripture, you get that term mote used in the King James Version, which is after this, but I'm pretty sure it's also in the Geneva Bible, which is the one Shakespeare would have had access to. Jesus uses the term mote when he's talking about judging others. He says, don't try to pick the mote out of your brother's eye until you get the beam out of your own. Well, what does the mote mean there? The little fault of your brother when you are full of them, enough specks of dust to make a log. Get thee to a nunnery. Hamlet says, I could accuse me of such things that were better my mother had not borne me. I'm very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. I am so full of rot and corruption, I don't have enough lifetime to bring it all out, Hamlet says. Okay? The observed of all observers, quite down. And I of ladies most deject and wretched, that suck the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled, out of time and harsh. Why is she of ladies most deject and wretched? Because she heard those words of Hamlet, Ophelia, I love you, and they went straight to her heart. She believed him implicitly. And yet, that's not quite what she said on the previous page when she attempted to hand back the packet of letters. She sees his noble and most sovereign reason now like sweet bells jangled, not making a beautiful noise, out of time and harsh. Hamlet said, after seeing the ghost, oh, alas. Or he says, the time is out of joint. Oh, wicked spite, that I was born to make it right, to fix the time. Here she said, he's out of joint. The unmatched form and feature of blown youth blasted with ecstasy. Ecstasy. He's out of his mind. Or, more literally, his mind is out of him. Ecstasy is an out-of-body experience. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see. What does she mean, to have seen what I have seen?
Here's what I found.
Oh, shut up. to have seen what she has seen before. Before when? When Hamlet loved her. She's like, this was the greatest love story ever, with none of the sad attendant parts. To have seen what I have seen, that is, to have seen that, to see, present tense, what I see. What does she now see? What has happened to Hamlet? Does she know what's happened to Hamlet? Does she know why Hamlet is the way he is? She thinks Hamlet's crazy, right? Why does Hamlet put on the antic disposition with Ophelia? I mean, he says it after seeing the ghost. What is going to be the purpose of it? He's going to act crazy. Seemingly, Hamlet is plotting what? When he says to Horatio and the others, if I put on an antic disposition, don't give out like you know what I'm doing. It's like he's already starting to plan to premeditate the murder of Claudius. Why? We're going to see in Act 5. Okay? In Act 5, after Hamlet has killed Polonius, sorry to give that away if you haven't gotten there yet, he's going to have a scene with Polonius' son. And Hamlet is going to introduce, for the first time in world history, almost positive that's the case, what defense? Not guilty by reason of insanity. He's going to say, did Hamlet kill your father? Wasn't Hamlet, it was Hamlet's madness. If Hamlet is not Hamlet, then Hamlet did it not. If I'm not me when I killed you, then not me killed you. That's not me. That was my madness, my alter ego. Okay? The king and Polonius come in. Notice Ophelia is still on the stage when they come in. Love, his affections do not that way tend. Nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. What has the king just told us? Heard everything Hamlet said. Which means, not a soliloquy. Or is he just talking about what Hamlet said with Ophelia? You can't make that assumption. He said, no, there's something in his soul, o'er which his melancholy sits on brood, like a hen sitting on a clutch of eggs, getting ready to hatch it. He's afraid of what's going to happen when these eggs, this brood, hatches. Okay? So what does the king say he's going to do? I'm sending Hamlet to England. Why? To collect our tribute. See, the original, the Ambleth story, that's set during the Viking Age. When the Vikings, rather than raiding parts of England, they would demand from local kings tribute, or warlords tribute. You pay us money and we won't attack you. Very similar to what? Today, the mafia, protection racket. Pay us a weekly stipend and we won't burn down your building. Okay? And he also says, maybe the salt sea air and the breeze and being out in nature will help him feel better. Polonius, good idea. You go ahead and try that. How now, Ophelia, line 170, you need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard it all. Which means, what else did he hear? Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Polonius heard that, but he didn't hear that. Because he says, after the play, let his queen mother call for him, and I will spy on them. In other words, he's not going to play the fool in his own house. He's going to play the fool in Hamlet's house, or in Hamlet's mother's house. Think of the advice again. that he gave to his son. It all boils down ultimately to two things. One is about other people, and one is about oneself. Be true to yourself. And what about others? Be honest with them. And don't, flip side, don't be false with them. Okay? What do I mean by that? Don't borrow from them, don't lend to them, don't lie to them, don't voice your own opinions and ideas to them. Take what they have to say about you and just bear it. King. Go ahead, you try that. Madness and great ones shall not unwatched go. Why not? What do they mean by great ones? Hamlet's a great one, right? Right? He's the prince. He's going to be king. Speaking of the United States, what happens if one of us four goes crazy? Nothing. People would look at me and go, he already is crazy. Nothing. Might affect you three a little bit. What if Joe Biden goes crazy? And I mean crazy, starts hopping around like a bunny or something. Or calls the guy who carries the football and says, I need the codes. All hell can break loose, right? Putin's gone a little off the deep end with the whole going into Ukraine and such. You got to keep an eye on those guys. So, scene 2. Hamlet comes in with some of the players. And I skipped this almost entirely with my other classes, and I need to come back for one thing for them. What I said with them is, all the scene is only important for is because it's often read, Hamlet's parts at least, as Shakespeare the playwright giving acting advice to actors. And he's saying, don't butcher my plays. Don't overact my lines with wild gesticulation and stuff. That is there, right? But it's also important because of what Hamlet says in lines 15 and following. Suit the action to the word to the action. That is, your physical movement on the stage. Suit the word to the action, and the action, what you do to those words. You shouldn't have somebody else, for example, come out and go, to be or not to. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because a supposed soliloquy, the person's just thinking. So in a lot of more recent plays, you have somebody, standing next to a tree or next to a wall and just kind of quietly saying these lines. He goes on. That's not the passage. With this special observance, that you overstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing. That is, the purpose of acting, the purpose of plays. Whose end, that is, purpose or intention, both at the first, ancient Greece, all the way up to now, so Sophocles, was and is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature. So, even though it's got the sunrise on it, you can still see a reflection in this. To hold a mirror up to nature, he says. To show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image. In the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. The very word drama means imitation. So it's an imitation of life. The idea behind a play is to show the audience what? The audience. See, when we see Oedipus, we're meant to see ourselves. When we see Hamlet, we're meant to see ourselves. When we see Claudius, we're meant to see ourselves. Because each one of these is like a sliver of us. Okay? more importantly for the play in this scene is coming just before when? The play within the play. So the play within the play is to hold a mirror up to the nature of the world of the play. How so? I'm going to skip an important part for a minute and go to the play within the play. In the play within the play, we get a mime scene, and then we get the characters come out and say these lines, and Hamlet is going to act like a Greek chorus. He's going to explain what's happening. In the mime scene, we see a king lie down in his garden and go to sleep, and we see him get poisoned. Okay? Later, the other actors come out, they deliver their lines, and Hamlet explains. Line 235. A poison's in the garden for his estate, that is, to inherit everything he has. His name's Gonzago, that is, the one being murdered. The story is excellent, written in very choice Italian. You shall see anon how the murderer gets the love of Gonzago's wife. And the king gets up, lights are turned on, king rushes out. It's held a mirror up to nature. That is the play wherein Hamlet catches the conscience of the king. Okay? So, Polonius, go back to where we were. The players come in, Polonius, Hamlet, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, others, the king and queen. They sit down, and the implication is kind of like the king sits down, the queen sits down, Ophelia sits down, and Hamlet's coming in. And the queen goes, Hamlet, sit next to me. Like there's an empty seat next to her. Hamlet sees Ophelia and says, no, good mother, here's metal more attractive. In other words, I'm more attracted to her than I am to you. Polonius, did you see that, my daughter? Hamlet, lady, shall I lie in your lap? Now, think of what those words mean visually. Shall I lie in your lap? Shall I lie on you? Polonius, in talking to Ophelia, said, talking to Ophelia and the king and queen, he misquoted Hamlet. He said earlier, I thought he only meant to rack thee, to lay with you. Here, Hamlet, shall I lie in your lap? He lays down at her feet. She says, no, my lord. Why? She understands the little pun about lying in her lap. Hamlet, there's people here. You know. Hamlet explains, I mean my head upon your lap. Okay? Now that can have multiple meanings. There's double and triple entendre there. Because head can mean this head in her lap, or it can mean my penis in your lap. Okay? And even if it's this head in your lap, he can be referring to oral sex. Playwrights and writers in Shakespeare's day pun on oral sex a bit. And she says, I, my lord, that is, I know what you mean. Hamlet, do you think I meant country matters? In Shakespeare's day, let me back up. I used to be an assistant textual editor. This big, massive work called the Very Orm edition of the poetry of John Donne. One of my duties was to read through manuscripts on microfilm to try to find copies of Donne's poems. Donne uses the word country in several of his poems, okay? I would say at least 40%, probably 50% of the time that the word country appeared, it's spelled C-U-N-T-R-Y. Couple of reasons. One, there's no standardized spelling in the 16th and 17th centuries, all right? Two, this is exactly what the word sounds like. The OU letter sequence I could give you right now 6 different words with that in the middle of it that are pronounced 6 different ways. Okay? It happens because of French entering the English language. There's another reason why this word gets spelled this way in Shakespeare's day. And that's because it is a visual pun. Because they have the same word, cunt, as we do today. Okay? So, you think I meant country matters? I think nothing, my lord. How do you represent nothing? 0. What's a 0 look like? A hole. Hamlet. That's a fair thought to lie between maids' legs. What is, my lord? And I think he really has her at that point. I think it feels like, what the hell are you talking about? What's a fair thought to lie between women's maids' legs? Nothing. A 0, a hole. You're married. In other words, Hamlet, you shouldn't. He's in a good mood. How was he the last time she saw him? Out of his mind, crazy, seemingly. Okay? So, we get the dumb show, we get the play within the play. The king gets up and leaves. Demands for light. Everybody leaves but Hamlet and Horatio. He and Horatio talk. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. They say, the queen wants to see you. You know, we want to figure out what's wrong with you, etc. The players come back in, or some of them do. And they're carrying recorders, you know, like flutes. Hamlet takes one of the recorders. And he asks Guildenstern, will you play upon this pipe? 3:14? My lord, I cannot. I pray you. Come on, please. I can't. I beg you. I beseech you. I don't know how. It's as easy as lying. What's Hamlet's point? You're a master at lying. Surely you can play this. You know, you stop these vintages with your fingers, this one with your thumb. You blow in it and make great, beautiful, deep music. But I don't know how to do any of this. Why, look you now how unworthy a thing you make of me. You would play upon me, you would seem to know my stops. That is, you think you know what buttons to push. You would pluck out the heart of my mystery. You would sound me from my lowest note to the top of my compass. And oh, there's much music. Excellent voice in this little organ. Yet cannot you make it speak. By God's blood! You think I'm easier to be played on than a pipe? And my favorite version of the play with Richard Burton, 1964, I think it's like the night or two before the opening on Broadway. It's kind of a dress rehearsal. I'm not dressed all fancy clothes, but just, working clothes. And if I remember correctly, at this scene, when he says that, he smacks him on the head with that recorder. Polonius comes in. I know we've only got a couple minutes. Polonius says, your mother wants to speak with you. Hamlet says, cool, I'll go. Everybody leaves. Hamlet gets a short soliloquy. What's he thinking about? I'm going to have a conversation with my mother. Who am I going to give it to her? But he's not going to give it to her, he says, like Nero did. Nero killed his mother. Hamlet says, no, I'm not going to. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. Okay? Scene 3, we're king, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. The king says, I don't trust Hamlet. I like him not, nor does it stands it safe with us to let his madness rage. He goes, you guys are leaving immediately. You're going to take Hamlet and go. Do they know what is in the letters that the king gives them to bear to England? The king tells us. The letter is going to say to the king of England, kill Hamlet. Okay? Are they guilty for bearing the letters? It's an interesting question. So, they all leave. Polonius leaves. Polonius says, I'm going up to the queen's chamber. She's called for Hamlet. He says, cool, fine. And the king, in a moment of weakness, we could say, suffers from pangs of conscience. And he prays for repentance. Notice, he isn't repentant. He prays for repentance. He gets down on his knees. He's in a position of prayer. Hamlet walks by and sees him and says, now I might do it, Pat. I could kill him right now. And then what does he start to do? He starts to think. And if I kill him right now, what's going to happen to him? He's in the act of prayer. It's an act of confession. If I kill him now, he will die free of original sin. It will have been wiped out. And therefore, he will go straight to heaven. While my Father suffers in burning torment. Purgatory. No. That's not good. I'm going to catch him, he says, in the act. Having sex with my mother, you know. Hamlet leaves, and what does Claudius do? My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. Why do words without thoughts never to heaven go? What do the words must be accompanied? What must the words be accompanied with? Sincerity. Right? We've all seen where somebody says something and it turns out they're not sincere at all. It is a complete and utter lie. Well, you can try to lie to God. It's one of the points behind the minister's black veil. We wear the veil. Why? Okay, God, you can have all this, but this one's mine. What has Claudius just told us? He's not repentant. Why? What would he have to do if he was repentant? Give up Gertrude? Give up the crown? Admit his guilt? Don't think so. All right, we'll stop there and pick up there on Monday. Hopefully get further. We're going to pick up with beginning of scene 4. We'll get through, definitely get through Act 3, probably quite a ways into Act 4. Have a good weekend. Do not forget the quiz that is due tonight if you haven't